Welcome back to Football Daily, and for today's 11, we're taking a look at players who are a burden for their club. However, there's no Mesut Ozil or Paul Pogba though, because come on, we've spoken about them enough. Goalkeeper, Adrian. When you have one of the best goalkeepers in the world, like Liverpool do with Alisson, the backup role can be somewhat neglected. After all, the position isn't regularly rotated. But when they suffer an injury, like Jurgen Klopp's number 1 has, their replacement, in this case Adrian, can hit the headlines. And not for the right reasons. Signed on a whim after an injury crisis at the beginning of last season, Adrian's Liverpool debut saw him branded a hero after saving the deciding penalty against Chelsea in the European Super Cup. But little more than a year later, opinion on the 33-year-old Spaniard has somewhat soured. His limitations were exposed in a humiliating 7-2 defeat to Aston Villa, whilst also being at fault for another goal in the 2-2 draw with rivals Everton. The first 2 league games the Reds didn't win this season. Fortunately, Alisson is back between the sticks now, but with the Brazilian having missed 17 games to injury since the beginning of 1920, it could be in Liverpool's interest to find someone a little more capable. Defender, Ranocchia. Considering Andrea Ranocchia is Inter Milan's longest serving player, having signed for the Nerazzurri back in January 2011, he should be held in high regard by the fans. But he is featured in just 207 games to the end of the last season, meaning the Italian has averaged just over 20 games a campaign, and since 2015, that average drops to just 10 each year. Injuries may be partly the cause here, but no more than his reputation developing into one of inconsistency and mistakes under pressure, a long way from being billed as Italy's top defensive prospect at the time of his transfer to Inter. In fact, in 16-17, he was even shipped out on loan to Premier League relegation fodder Hull City, as he was so far down the pecking order under Stefano Pioli. Having been on a wage of about €60,000 since he was last a regular back in 14-15, Ranocchia's time at Inter Milan has long been over. The club have a recent history of overpaying ageing stars, but in this instance, they're overpaying their 6th choice centre-back. Defender, Marcos Rojo. There are probably a few players on the books at Manchester United you could call out for being a waste of resources, but none are such a drain as Marcos Rojo continues to be. Signed from Sporting in 2014 after impressing at that year's World Cup for Argentina, it's sadly not gone as well for him since arriving. Firstly, he couldn't get a work permit on his initial signing due to pending criminal charges, and missed 3 matches. 12 months later, passport issues prevented him from joining up with the squad on a pre-season tour, resulting in a £140,000 fine. Still remaining part of first team plans, Rojo has made almost 100 appearances in his first 3 years in England. Since then though, the 30-year-old has made just 27. Somehow managing to secure a new contract worth £80,000 a week in 2018. This summer, United reportedly rejected a request from Rojo to terminate the remainder of his contract with the club, meaning Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's side are set to throw away another £4 million this year as Rojo rots in the reserves. Defender, Layvin Kazawa. It might be harsh to call Layvin Kazawa a burden, but it's definitely a struggle to see the value in PSG continuing to keep him around. Despite costing Les Parisiens €23 million back in 2015, the 28-year-old has never topped 20 league appearances and seems set to leave the Parc des Princes when his contract expired at the end of last season. But to everyone's surprise, including Kazawa himself, the left-back was handed a 4-year extension by the club, somehow even managing to double his wage with the French champions. You would imagine with that type of investment for someone in their peak years, he'd be a key member of the side. Well, you'd be wrong, with Kazawa third choice behind both Michel Bakker and Juan Bernat under Thomas Tuchel, and at this early stage of the season has made just 1 start. Even that was in an unfamiliar right-back role. You would think they'd have thought better than extending a player who has struggled to hold down a first-team place since his arrival. Midfielder, Jesse Rodriguez. And we actually stay put in Paris as we move into our midfield, with the oft-forgotten Jesse Rodriguez. Once highly rated at Real Madrid, the Spaniard's career never really took off, and despite playing for 6 different clubs over the last 5 years, has actually been a PSG player since 2016. Fortunately for the Qatari-backed club, the 27-year-old's 5-year deal runs out at the end of this season, and even then, that might not come soon enough. Always struggling with injuries, he made just one start in 2016 and was sent on loan to hometown Las Palmas, who turned down the opportunity to sign him permanently because of his off-field actions. This includes an acrimonious breakup with his partner which resulted in a drawn-out court battle, as well as seemingly to be more focused on his music career as alias JM. Loan spells with Stoke, Betis and Sporting total just 48 appearances and 4 goals, whilst his output for PSG remains just 2 goals in less than 1,000 minutes. It appears that no club wants him, whilst PSG just haven't been able to get rid of him. Midfielder Jean-Philippe Kabamin. Ahead of the 2019-20 campaign, Everton paid Mainz £25 million to secure the signing of defensive midfielder Jean-Philippe Kabamin. 15 months later, and the Ivorian has cost the Toffees over £200,000 per minute played, having just completed a game and a half of football since his arrival at Goodison Park. In fairness, the 25-year-old has had a lot of injury problems, requiring surgery on a thigh problem shortly after his transfer that ultimately ruled him out for the season. Then hopes of making a post-lockdown return under Carlo Ancelotti was scuppered after rupturing his Achilles tendon, meaning Gbamin still has to win over his coach, despite the Italian being in charge for almost a year. The other way of looking at it is he has been featured in every game he's been available for since the beginning of last season, but upon his expected return at the end of this month, Gbamin has work to do. With Ancelotti set on Alan and Decore in central midfield, the former Bundesliga player may soon become another expensive mistake on Merseyside. Midfielder Sami Khedira. In absence of Ozil, we put in his former Real Madrid teammate and fellow 2014 World Cup winner, Sami Khedira. There is a case to be made that over the last decade and more, the 33-year-old is amongst the most underrated players. But there's no doubting that over the last few years, he's become a bit of a headache for Juventus. The dynamic midfielder with the Bianconeri since 2015 has averaged less than 700 minutes a season since 2018, with most of this being due to various injuries. Having had multiple knee surgeries as well as a heart condition, Khedira has missed 60 matches in the last 2 years as a result. Add into the mix an overloaded midfield featuring Arthur, Aaron Ramsey, Weston McKennie, Adrian Rabiot and Rodrigo Bentancur, and it's feasible that Khedira, who earns €100,000 a week, is 6th choice under new boss Andrea Pirlo. His contract might be up at the end of the season, but Juve are already looking to terminate it ahead of the January transfer window, not wanting to waste any more resource on the veteran. Midfielder Yannick Carrasco. The final midfield spot was a toss-up between two Atletico Madrid wingers, Tamar Lamar and Yannick Ferreira Carrasco. Ultimately, we went for the Belgian over his French teammate. Why? Well, whilst Lamar has underperformed since his switch from Monaco in 2018, Carrasco's move back to La Liga just seems a little bit more bizarre. The 27-year-old also joined Atleti in 2015, becoming an important part of the squad under Diego Simeone. He started more often than not, contributing 25 goals in 81 matches before a surprise switch to Chinese Super League side Dalian Yifang, a club that happened to be owned by a major shareholder of the Spanish side. So when Carrasco started to kick up a fuss and want out of the Far East over the last year, and no club meeting his asking price, he was conveniently sent back on loan to Atleti, a move that would turn permanent. He's not had the same impact since, and has twice as many sub-appearances as he does starts. It's almost as if Simeone wasn't keen on Carrasco's return, and now has to shoulder the burden, Belgian, for the next 4 years. Forward, Antoine Griezmann. In 2019, Barcelona finally signed Antoine Griezmann, spending €120 million to take the Frenchman to the Camp Nou. But whilst the club celebrated this as a victory, much of the footballing fraternity tried to work out what the World Cup winger would bring to his new club. Despite having a hand in 3 goals in his home debut against Real Betis, the 29-year-old would contribute just 19 goals in 48 matches for the Blaugrana. No doubt the club would have expected a better return on their 9-figure transfer fee and a reported €20 million a year in wages, roughly €400,000 a week, trailing just Lionel Messi as Barca's highest paid player. Over the summer, Griezmann was even used as bait for PSG in a potential Neymar deal, but just months later, Barcelona find themselves in a precarious situation, needing to find a way to cut some €200 million in annual wages to avoid bankruptcy. With his wages and a decent sell-on value despite underperformance, Griezmann is an asset his employers can actually make some money off. The burden isn't the player's fault here, but it's a burden nonetheless. Forward, Christian Bentekee. Christian Bentekee was something of a revelation when he arrived on English shores, scoring 19 Premier League goals for Aston Villa in 2012-13. After 2 more seasons of double-digit scoring, he moved to Liverpool in 2015, and as was the case with their transfers then, somewhat underwhelmed, being sent straight on to Crystal Palace the following campaign. And whilst the Eagles thought they could rediscover Benteke's form, it really hasn't gone to plan. 15 goals in 16-17 was a decent return, but in the 3 years since, the Belgian has scored just 6 goals in 71 matches, with the likes of Patrick Van Aanholt and Jeffrey Schlupp outscoring him, whilst Michy Batshuayi matched his total in a 12-game stint at Selhurst Park. So for a deal that cost Palace an initial £27 million, Benteke has cost more than £1 million per goal scored. Playing for a conservative side under Roy Hodgson, chances are often few and far between for the strikers, and if the 29-year-old continues to flounder in front of goal, these misses will cost points, and could even jeopardise Crystal Palace's Premier League status. Forward, Stevan Jovetic. Much like French rivals PSG, AS Monaco, whilst producing a number of great French footballers in recent years, also have a reputation for overpaying and overspending. One player that hasn't hit the levels expected has been Stevan Jovetic. He signed from the Principality side back in 2017. Despite averaging a goal every 93 minutes in his debut campaign, injury problems have seen the Montenegrin make just 9 starts in the 2 years since. In fact, the 31-year-old's entire Monaco career to the end of last season totaled just 16 league starts and little over 1,600 minutes, so whilst 12 goals isn't a bad return, it will be frustrating to coaches and fans alike that he hasn't been able to do it consistently over a domestic year. Having already missed 80 games for Les Monégasques, it's very unlikely that Jovetic will be offered a new deal unless he rediscovers some kind of form. But despite being fully fit this year, the former Premier League winner has had to contend with just the odd minute here and there off the pitch. It seems Monaco are content just having him hang around until then. So that was our squad of 11 players who we think are a burden on their club. But have we missed out anyone else? Or do you disagree with us? Please let us know in the comments below. If you've enjoyed this video, then smash that like button. And as always, guys, don't forget to subscribe to Football Daily.